They gave my brother the entire $10 million fortune and our family company just because he's the only son. I'm Stephanie Mercer, 29, the granddaughter who built that logistics business into a powerhouse. They told me to be grateful as a daughter who would marry and change her name. When I questioned it, my parents called me jealous and said tradition mattered more than my achievements. That moment shattered me, but it also set in motion a comeback no one saw coming. If you faced similar betrayal or bias, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your strength. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of resilience and triumph. From my earliest memories, my grandparents were my world. Grandpa William and Grandma Eleanor weren't just family. They were my heroes, my mentors, the ones who saw something in me that no one else did. Grandpa had come from humble Midwest roots, starting Mercer Logistics back in 1980 with nothing but a single truck and a dream. He turned it into a multi-million-dollar empire handling shipments across the country, employing hundreds in Cleveland and beyond. Grandma was right beside him, managing the books in those early days, her sharp mind keeping everything afloat through tough times. They lived in a cozy home in suburban Columbus, the kind with a big backyard and a library filled with business books that smelled of old leather and wisdom. I remember the fishing trips at Lake Erie like they were yesterday. Every Sunday in summer, Grandpa would wake me at dawn, the air cool and crisp, with the promise of adventure. We'd drive up to the lake, the sun rising over the water like a golden promise. The waves lapped gently against the shore as we cast our lines from the old oak tree spot, the one with the hollow where we'd hide notes for each other. It was our secret place. Grandpa would tell stories of his first deliveries, the failures that nearly broke him, and how he learned that success wasn't about avoiding mistakes but rising from them. The key, Stephanie, he'd say with his eyes crinkling, is grit and vision. You have both, my girl. Grandma would pack sandwiches and join us sometimes, her laughter echoing as she teased Grandpa about his big fish tales. Those moments made me feel seen, valued not just as a granddaughter, but as the future they believed in. At home, things were different. My father, Richard, worked as the chief financial officer at Mercer Logistics, but he always seemed in Grandpa's shadow. He'd been there for decades crunching numbers, but Grandpa never trusted him with the big decisions. I could see the resentment in Dad's eyes, the way his jaw tightened when Grandpa praised my ideas. Mom Patricia was a former local beauty queen who married into the family and dedicated herself to social clubs and appearances. She doted on my brother Marcus, who at 31 was still coasting through life on charm and privilege. Marcus was polite on the surface, a smooth talker who knew how to please the grandparents with his smiles and stories. But behind it, he was incompetent, blowing money on parties and expensive cars, showing up to the office maybe a few hours a week, pretending to learn the business. He had no real understanding of logistics or leadership, but in our family's eyes, he was the golden boy because he was the son. While Marcus partied, I poured my heart into the company. By 16, I was interning in the summers, sitting in on meetings in the Cleveland office, absorbing everything. The library there was my sanctuary, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books on strategy and economics. Grandpa would read to me from his favorites like The Art of War, underlining passages about leadership. "One day, all this will be yours," he'd say, gesturing to the room, the trucks outside the legacy. "Not because you're family, but because you've earned it." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He and Grandma had never broken a promise. But the cracks were there. At family dinners in our Columbus home, Dad would question my strategies, his tone dripping with condescension. "Do you really think expanding routes to the West Coast is smart, with fuel costs rising?" had asked, glancing at Mom for support. I'd reply calmly, "I've run the numbers. Dad, the growth potential outweighs the risks." Mom would chime in, defending Marcus if I ever pointed out his lack of effort. "Not everyone needs to be a workaholic like you, Stephanie. Marcus has other talents." He'd sit there smirking, knowing he was untouchable as the only son. Inner thoughts raced through my mind during those moments. Why can't they see me? I've dedicated everything to this family, this business. But I pushed it down, focusing on making Grandpa and Grandma proud. My path was clear. High school valedictorian in 2014, full scholarship to Wharton starting that fall. I graduated summa cum laude in 2018, diving straight into the company. Starting in the mailroom, I worked my way up, earning respect from employees who whispered that I was the future. By 2023, as COO, I was running day-to-day operations, modernizing with new tech and routes. The company thrived under my ideas, revenue climbing. Grandpa and Grandma introduced me to partners as their successor, their eyes shining with pride. Yet the tension grew. Overhearing conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Mom suddenly interested in company assets. Family dinners excluding me because I was working late. I was too focused on proving myself to notice the storm brewing. My 29th birthday in 2024 was the last normal day. Grandparents took me to our favorite steakhouse in Cleveland, presenting an antique pocket watch. For the next generation of Mercer leadership, Grandpa said, his voice thick with emotion. Grandma nodded, squeezing my hand. "We're so proud, dear. You've earned this." Little did I know within months everything would shatter. The family I thought supported me would reveal their true colors, clinging to outdated traditions that favored Marcus, simply for being the son. But they underestimated me. What came next would change everything. Looking back, those early years with my grandparents shaped everything I became. Our suburban home in Columbus was a haven of stability, the kind of place where the streets were lined with maple trees that turned fiery red in fall, and the air always carried the faint scent of fresh-cut grass from neighbors' lawns. It was there in the cozy den, with its wooden panels and stacks of ledgers, that Grandpa William first sat me down at age 12 to explain the basics of the family business. Mercer Logistics started small, he said, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders over truck radios, just one rig hauling freight across Ohio in 1980. But with hard work and smart risks, it grew into something real, something that put food on tables for hundreds of families. Grandma Eleanor would chime in from the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour from baking pies, reminding him that her number crunching kept them afloat during the lean times. She'd wink at me, her eyes sparkling, and say, "Numbers don't lie, Stephanie. Learn them and you'll always have the upper hand." By 16, during the summer of 2012, I was diving headfirst into internships at the Cleveland office. The building was a no-nonsense warehouse turned headquarters, with the hum of forklifts and the sharp smell of diesel fuel lingering in the air. I'd arrive early, my backpack slung over one shoulder, eager to shadow Grandpa in meetings. He let me sit in on negotiations with suppliers, his hand steady on my shoulder as he explained profit margins. One afternoon, as we reviewed balance sheets spread across his desk like a map of conquests, he looked at me seriously. "You see this, my girl? This isn't just paper. It's the lifeblood of what we've built. You have the eye for it, sharper than anyone I've seen." Grandma would stop by with coffee, her presence a quiet force, and add, "And the heart, too. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those moments filled me with a glowing pride, a sense of belonging that made my chest swell. The employees started noticing too, the truck drivers tipping their hats, and the office staff smiling as I walked by. Little Miss Mercer, they'd call me, but there was respect in it, earned through my willingness to roll up my sleeves and learn every route, every regulation. But even then, the shadows of office politics crept in. Dad's allies, a couple of old-school managers who'd been with the company since the 90s, would make subtle digs. During breaks in the break room with its vending machines, humming and coffee staining the counters, I'd overhear whispers. "She's sharp, sure, but logistics is a man's game." Too much emotion in decisions like that. They'd laugh it off as joking, but it stung a reminder that not everyone saw me as the future. Inner thoughts swirled as I pretended not to hear. Why does it matter that I'm a woman? I've got the numbers to back me up. But I pushed forward, determined not to let it dim my fire. Grandparents' warnings came in quiet moments, like during one of our Lake Erie trips. As the sun dipped low, painting the water in oranges and pinks, Grandpa cast his line and sighed. "Your parents, they mean well, but they cling to old ideas. Marcus is the son, they say the one to carry the name. But names don't run companies, vision does. Grandma nodded, reeling in her line slowly. We've seen the pressure building. Don't let it break you, dear. Stay strong. It was a light twist in the conversation, their words hanging in the air, like the mist off the lake planting seeds of anxiety amid my determination. What if they were right? What if family pressure won out? That determination carried me through high school. In 2014, standing on the stage as valedictorian, the auditorium filled with clapping families and the scent of fresh flowers, I felt invincible. My speech echoed with lessons from Grandpa about perseverance and integrity. Parents were there. Mom beaming, but with that reserved look, Dad nodding stiffly. Marcus skipped it for a party, texting excuses. Inner thoughts raced as I accepted my diploma. This is just the beginning. I'll show them all. Heading to Wharton that fall, the campus alive with ambitious students and the rustle of leaves underfoot, I dove into classes on finance and strategy. Summers back at Mercer interning, harder proving my place. Anxiety lingered subtly, a whisper in quiet moments, but determination drowned it out. I was building something unbreakable, or so I thought. The real tests were still ahead. Wharton was a whirlwind that tested every ounce of my resolve, starting that fall in 2014 on the bustling Philadelphia campus, where ivy clung to historic buildings like secrets from the past. The air was thick with ambition, students hustling between lectures in crisp autumn leaves, crunching underfoot the scent of coffee from nearby carts fueling late-night study sessions. I threw myself into classes on finance and supply chain management, my notebooks filled with diagrams of efficient routes and cost analyses that mirrored what I'd learned at Mercer Logistics. Interning back home during breaks, I'd return to Cleveland with fresh ideas, the office buzzing with the clang of loading docks and the roar of engines as trucks pulled out for deliveries. Grandpa would meet me at the door, his face lighting up like the dashboard lights on a midnight run. Tell me what those professors are teaching you that I don't already know, he'd tease, leading me to the conference room where we'd brainstorm over steaming mugs. By my sophomore year, I was balancing advanced courses with real-world application spending weekends, mapping out optimization strategies for our fleet. One evening in the dorm, surrounded by posters of global trade routes and the hum of my laptop fan, a friend named Lisa dropped by, her eyes wide as I explained a project on sustainable shipping. "You're going to take over your family's company, aren't you?" she asked, plopping on my bed. But isn't it weird being so driven? Most girls here are thinking about consulting gigs or finance, not trucking empires. Her words hit like a sudden pothole on a smooth highway, a subtle judgment that made me pause. Inner thoughts raced. Am I too ambitious? Is it because I'm a woman that this feels like overreaching? But I shook it off, smiling as I replied, "It's not about gender. It's about legacy." Still, those comments lingered, echoes of societal whispers, questioning why a woman would aim so high in a field dominated by men. Marcus, meanwhile, was the picture of minimal effort. At 31, he'd show up to the office a few hours a week, charming the reception staff with his smooth talk and stories of weekend parties in downtown Cleveland, where he'd flash his credit card at trendy bars overlooking the Cuyahoga River. He'd poke his head into meetings asking basic questions that revealed his total lack of grasp on logistics, like confusing container loads with truck capacities. Grandpa would patiently explain, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. Marcus doesn't have the fire, he'd confide later during our library sessions, the room dim with evening light filtering through dusty windows. Your brother knows how to please us with his visits and gifts, but running this place. That's you, Stephanie. Grandma would nod from her armchair, her knitting needles clicking softly. We see it, dear. Don't let the pressure to favor him cloud your path. Graduation in 2018 felt like crossing a major milestone, the ceremony under a clear spring sky, with caps tossing like confetti over the quad. Summa cum laude, the dean announced my name, and as I walked the stage, the weight of my diploma felt like validation. Grandparents were there, beaming from the front row. Grandpa clapping with that proud rumble in his chest. "You did it, my girl," he said afterward, hugging me tight, the scent of his aftershave, mingling with the fresh-cut flowers from my bouquet. Grandma slipped a family heirloom bracelet on my wrist, whispering, "For the leader you'll become." Parents attended too, Mom in her elegant dress, Dad stiff in his suit. Marcus sent a text, "Congratulations, skipping the event for a golf outing." Inner thoughts bubbled with a mix of joy and unease. This is my moment. But why does it feel like they're waiting for me to step aside? Returning to Mercer Logistics full-time, I started in the mailroom as Grandpa insisted no special treatment. The warehouse was alive with activity packages stacking high under fluorescent lights, the air heavy with cardboard and ink from labels. I sorted shipments, learned every employee's name from the drivers wiping sweat in the loading bay to the clerks filing manifests. Within a year, I moved to logistics coordinator, optimizing routes that saved thousands in fuel. By 2020, as operations manager, I was leading teams through the pandemic chaos, implementing contactless deliveries that kept us afloat when others faltered. Board meetings became my arena. The long oak table in the Cleveland conference room, polished to a shine charts, projecting growth under my modernization plans, like digital supply chains expanding across screens. Empowerment surged through me during those sessions, standing at the head with pointers clicking through slides, explaining how drone tracking could revolutionize our efficiency. The room filled with nods from veteran board members, their faces lit by the projector glow. "This is what we need," one said, fresh thinking. But not all were on board. Dad's allies would mutter afterward in the hallway's echoes, bouncing off metal lockers. "She's pushing too hard too fast. A woman's touch is fine for details, but big risks. That's for the men." It fueled my fire, proving them wrong with results. Family dinners back in Columbus grew tense. The dining room, with its chandelier casting warm light over roasted dinners and steamed vegetables, became a battlefield. Dad would interrogate my plans, his fork pausing mid-air, expanding to West Coast ports. With inflation like this, his tone condescending eyes, flicking to Mom for agreement. I'd respond steadily, data in hand. "The projections show 20% growth. We can't stay stagnant." Marcus would chime in, occasionally lounging at the table with his phone buzzing from party invites, but mostly he'd get praise for nothing. "Good to see you at the office this week, son," Dad would say, clapping him on the back. "Marcus has greater responsibilities ahead." Inner thoughts boiled. Responsibilities he barely shows up. Why am I the one scrutinized while he's the praised prince? Frustration built like a blocked shipment, slow and simmering. Marcus' unemployment didn't matter. He was the son, the heir apparent in their eyes, coasting on privilege while I fought for every inch. Grandma would pull me aside after her hand soft on my arm. "We see your work, dear. Don't let it divide you." But the bias was clear, a wall I couldn't yet scale. As 2023 drew on with me, as COO driving record profits, the whispers grew louder. The real tests were unfolding, testing not just my skills, but my place in the family. As 2023 wore on, the undercurrents in our family home grew stronger, like a river swelling after heavy rain threatening to overflow its banks. The Columbus house, with its wide porch and creaking wooden floors that echoed every footstep, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage for unspoken battles. Dinners around the polished oak table became minefields, the air thick with the aroma of Mom's pot roast and steamed broccoli, but laced with tension. Dad would carve the meat with deliberate slices, his knife scraping the plate, while Mom passed the rolls, her smile tight. "Marcus deserves more recognition," she'd say casually, glancing at my brother with that adoring look. As the only son, after all, the one to carry the Mercer name forward. Dad's resentment toward my rising role at the company bubbled up in those moments, his eyes narrowing as he added, "You've done well, Stephanie, but don't forget family comes first." Marcus has responsibilities you can't understand. Those words cut deep, a sharp sting that left me feeling isolated, like I was standing alone on the shore while everyone else sailed away. Inner thoughts churned as I poked at my food, the fork tines scraping porcelain. Why does my hard work count for nothing? I've poured my soul into Mercer Logistics, yet they act like Marcus is the destined leader, just because he's male. I channeled that pain into work, arriving at the Cleveland office before dawn. The parking lot empty under sodium lights, the building humming to life as I flipped switches. The warehouse bays filled with the rumble of engines warming up, drivers shouting greetings as they loaded crates stamped with our logo. I'd bury myself in reports, my office overlooking the docks where semis backed in with beeps, piercing the morning fog, turning frustration into fuel for new efficiencies. The subplot of sibling rivalry simmered beneath it all, emerging in subtle ways that gnawed at my confidence. Marcus, with his easy charm and polished exterior, would drop by the office sporadically, his expensive cologne trailing him like a cloud. He'd schmooze with the staff, handing out coffee runs on the company card, but when it came to actual work, he was a ghost. One afternoon in late spring, I discovered a sabotaged project report on my desk key data, altered to make my West Coast expansion proposal look reckless. The numbers were off by just enough to raise alarms, the spreadsheet cells highlighted in red like warning flags. Who did this? I muttered, my heart pounding as I checked the originals on my computer screen, the cursor blinking accusingly. It had to be Marcus. He'd been in the day before pretending to review files, his laughter echoing from the break room. Inner thoughts raced with anger. He's trying to undermine me, make me look incompetent, so he can slide into place without effort. But why does he really believe he's entitled because he's the son? I confronted him quietly in the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting long shadows on the linoleum floor. "Marcus, did you touch my report?" He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms with that smug smile, his tie loosened like he couldn't be bothered. "What if I did? It's not like you need all the glory, sis. Grandparents see me as the heir, the one with real responsibilities." His words hung heavy, a confirmation of the bias I'd feared. Emotion swirled, frustration mixing with a deep hurt that made my throat tighten. How could my own brother see me as competition to crush, not a partner? The mini-climax came at a family dinner in mid-2023, the table set with Grandma's china candlelight, flickering on crystal glasses filled with iced tea. The room was warm, the scent of baked ham and sweet potatoes filling the air, but the atmosphere crackled with unspoken words. Grandpa cleared his throat after dessert, his hands folded on the linen cloth. "Eleanor and I have been thinking about the future." He said, his voice steady but eyes soft. "Marcus will inherit the bulk, the 10 million and control. He's the only son, the one to carry our line forward. Daughters marry and take new names, but sons build on what we've started." Grandma nodded, her silver hair catching the light, though I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. "It's tradition, dear. We believe it's right." The announcement hit like a cold wave crashing over me, my fork clattering to the plate. "But I've earned this," I protested, my voice trembling as I looked around the table. "I've grown the company, proven myself." Mom interjected sharply, her napkin folded neatly. "You should be grateful, Stephanie. They're still letting you work there. Family harmony matters more than your jealousy." Dad nodded, avoiding my eyes, while Marcus smirked, sipping his drink. Inner thoughts screamed in the silence. This isn't fair. Tradition over merit. But I'm the one who's built it. Grandpa pulled me aside later in the library, the shelves towering with familiar books, the air musty and comforting. "We know your worth, my girl," he whispered. Grandma standing beside him with a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Don't let this break you. We're counting on you to rise above." Their quiet reassurance was a balm, but the unease grew a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. As I drove home that night, the highway lights blurring through the windshield, frustration simmered. The family bias was out in the open now, and Marcus was positioned to take it all without a fight. But I wasn't ready to back down. The shadows were lengthening and the real storm was just beginning to brew. It started in early 2024, a crisp January morning when the call came like a thunderclap disrupting the quiet routine of my life. I was in the Cleveland office poring over quarterly reports in my corner suite, the window overlooking the snow-dusted docks where trucks idled with plumes of exhaust, rising in the cold air when my phone vibrated urgently on the desk. Grandma's voice on the line was shaky, unusual for her steady tone. "Steph, it's Grandpa. He's had a spell collapsed in the library. We're at the hospital now." My heart dropped, a cold weight settling in my chest as I grabbed my coat and keys, the office blurring around me in a haze of panic. Emotions crashed over me like waves on Lake Erie during a gale shock, mingling with grief that he might be slipping away, the man who had been my rock. I can't lose him now, not when the family pressures are mounting. The drive to Cleveland Clinic was a blur, the highway slick with winter slush wipers swiping away flurries that danced like confused spirits in the headlights. Inner thoughts tumbled chaotically. What if this is it, Hez 78, but he's always seemed invincible, the one who built everything from nothing. I can't lose him now, not when the family pressures are mounting. Arriving at the hospital, the sterile lobby smelled of antiseptic and worry fluorescent lights harsh overhead as I hurried to the reception desk, my boots squeaking on the linoleum floor. The nurse directed me to the cardiac unit where Grandma sat in a waiting room chair, her hands clasped tightly, knuckles white against her wool coat. She stood when she saw me, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her rose perfume. "It's a minor scare, dear," she whispered, "but they're running tests. A manageable arrhythmia, they think, but it revealed some underlying issues." Grandpa was in a private room hooked to monitors, beeping softly like distant alarms, his face pale against the pillows, but his eyes lighting up when I entered. "My brave girl," he murmured, reaching for my hand with a grip still firm. "Don't fret. I've got more miles in me yet." We talked briefly, his voice low as he shared stories of early days hauling freight through blizzards, but the visit was cut short. Dad arrived with Mom and Marcus, their presence filling the room like a sudden crowd in a quiet space. "You should go back to work," Stephanie Dad said curtly, his suit rumpled from the drive. "We've got this. We'll keep you updated." It was the start of the restrictions, subtle at first, but growing insistent. Over the next days, my attempts to visit were thwarted. I'd arrive at the hospital, the corridors echoing with muffled pages and rolling carts, only to be told by nurses that family had requested limited access for rest. "Grandpa's condition requires calm," one said apologetically, but I saw the unease in her eyes, as if she'd been pressured. Dad had used his connections, perhaps dropping names from his business circles or making false claims about my stress-inducing visits, while Mom and Marcus spent hours by the bedside. Their visits increased laughter filtering out from the room as I waited in the hall, the vinyl chairs sticking to my legs in the stuffy air. Inner thoughts boiled with frustration. Why are they shutting me out? Is it because they fear it'll challenge the favoritism, remind Grandpa of my place? The tense situation heightened one evening when I slipped in unannounced, the hospital quiet under evening lights. Hiding behind a corner near the room, I overheard arguments through the cracked door, voices low but sharp. "Marcus needs this." Dad insisted, his tone urgent. "Has the son the one with greater responsibilities? Tradition matters." Mom's reply murmured agreement. "Stephanie will understand. It's for harmony." Grandpa's voice, weak but firm, pushed back. "She's earned it too. Don't force this." The words landed like blows, confirming the bias it suspected, my hands clenching at my sides as I retreated, tears stinging my eyes. Meanwhile, at the office, the subplot of allies loyal to Dad spread rumors like wildfire through dry grass. I'd walk into meetings, the conference room air-conditioned, cool with the scent of fresh printed agendas, only to catch whispers fading as I entered. "She's too aggressive for a woman in charge," one said, thinking I couldn't hear. "Emotional decisions will sink us." It was Dad's cronies, older managers who'd golfed with him for years, undermining me with sexist remarks that chipped at my confidence. Inner thoughts raged during those moments. They see my gender as a weakness, but it'll turn it into strength. Still, it isolated me further, the warehouse noise of loading trucks a backdrop to my growing doubt. As Grandpa stabilized the doctors, confirming a manageable condition with medication and rest, he and Grandma pulled me aside during a rare allowed visit. The room was dim curtains drawn against the afternoon sun, filtering through slats, casting striped shadows on the linoleum floor. They whispered clues. Grandpa's hand on mine. Remember our Lake Erie spot, the Oak Hollow, and your favorite book in the library. Answers there if needed. It was post-recovery advice, their eyes filled with concern, a quiet reassurance amid the storm. But the unease lingered, a dark cloud on the horizon. The family divide was widening, and I sensed the worst was yet to come. Days turned into a frustrating blur as Grandpa's recovery progressed slowly, the hospital becoming a second home I was barely allowed into. My visits were limited to brief windows, often cut short by nurses, citing doctors, orders, or family requests, their voices apologetic but firm in the sterile corridors, where the beep of machines echoed like distant warnings. It arrived with flowers clutched in my hands, the petals soft and fragrant against my skin, only to be turned away at the door, watching through the small window as Dad hovered by the bedside, his posture, possessive, supporting every decision Grandma and Grandpa made, with nods and murmured agreements. In March 2024, as spring teased the air with hints of warmth outside the cold glass walls of Cleveland Clinic, I caught glimpses of him, leaning close, his voice low but insistent, reinforcing the favoritism that had been brewing. "Marcus needs this stability," he'd say, glancing at Mom, who stood nearby with her arms crossed her face, a mask of concern. Hez the son, after all. Emotions of suspicion coiled tight in my chest, a knot that tightened with each denied entry, leaving me feeling helpless like a ship adrift in fog without a lighthouse. Inner thoughts swirled as I paced the waiting room, the vinyl seats worn from countless worried families, the magazines dog-eared and outdated. Why are they isolating me now when Grandpa needs all of us? Is it to solidify Marcus as the heir to erase my place before it's too late? Grandpa's room was a sanctuary turned fortress, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun casting striped shadows on the linoleum floor. When I did get in, Grandma would squeeze my hand, her skin, papery but warm, whispering, "We're okay, dear, but things are complicated. The family pressures, they're weighing heavy." Those complications built like storm clouds, gathering force. Grandpa, propped up on pillows with tubes snaking from his arm, would warn me in hushed tones, during rare moments alone, his voice raspy from the ordeal. "Watch yourself, my girl. Your parents mean well, but their ideas about tradition about Marcus carrying the line, it's clouding judgment." Grandma would nod from her chair by the window, the city skyline a hazy backdrop through the glass, adding, "We love you all, but harmony is fragile. Don't let it break you." Their words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears, amplifying my helplessness as I left, each time the elevator descending, with a soft ding that felt like a door closing on hope. The subplot of societal backlash crept in unexpectedly, adding salt to the wounds. Friends I'd known since college, the ones who cheered my Wharton success, started calling with concern that twisted into judgment. During a coffee meetup at a cozy spot in downtown Cleveland, the aroma of fresh brewed espresso mingling with baked goods, my old roommate Sarah leaned forward over her latte, steam rising like whispers. "Steph, I heard about the inheritance talk. Aren't you being a bit ungrateful? Marcus is the son, he has to think about family legacy. You'll marry someday, change your name. It's just how things are." Her words stung a betrayal from someone I trusted. The cafe noise fading as blood rushed in my ears. Inner thoughts flared with indignation. Ungrateful for wanting what I've earned. This isn't the 1950s. But I smiled tightly, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the cup. Maybe, but merit should matter more than gender. The calls kept coming, texts buzzing on my phone screen, in the quiet of my apartment, friends echoing the same sentiments, their voices laced with pity. It isolated me further, the world outside the family seeming to align against me, amplifying the divide. One afternoon, tension peaked when I arrived unannounced, slipping past the nurse's station with a determined stride, the hallway lights reflecting off polished floors. Peeking through the door crack, I saw Dad and the family attorney, James Thornton, in deep conversation papers spread on the tray table beside Grandpa's bed. Thornton, a silver-haired man with a briefcase that looked worn from years of legal battles, was leaving as I approached his face, troubled brows furrowed like storm lines on a map. "Stephanie," he said, quietly pulling me aside in the hall where the air conditioner hummed softly. "Your grandparents are being guilt-tripped emotionally on family peace to favor Marcus. It's all about harmony, they say, but it feels forced." The light twist hit me like a gust of wind, his words explicit and chilling, confirming the manipulation I'd suspected. Inner thoughts raced. So it's not just tradition, it's active pressure. They're erasing my future for an illusion of unity. Grandpa and Grandma, sensing the storm, called me in for a final lucid moment before discharge. The room was brighter now, sunlight streaming in as spring advanced the monitors, beeping less urgently. They held my hands, Grandpa's grip steadier, Grandma's eyes clear. "We promise to protect your future, my dear Grandpa," whispered his voice firm despite the frailty. Grandma added, "We believe in you no matter what others say." Their words were a lifeline in the chaos, a promise that cut through the helplessness. As I left the hospital, fading in my rearview mirror, suspicion lingered, but so did a spark of resolve. The divide was wide, but perhaps not insurmountable. Yet, April brought a tentative thaw, both outside where the snow melted into muddy streams, along Cleveland streets, and inside the hospital where Grandpa's condition stabilized enough for discharge. The recovery felt like a fragile victory, the family gathering at the bedside in his room, one last time before home, the air lighter with the scent of fresh linens, and the faint beep of monitors winding down. Grandma sat by his side, her hand in his, her face etched with relief as she smoothed the blanket over his legs. "We made it through." "William," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of shared years. Grandpa nodded, his color returning, though his eyes still held that weary shadow. "Yes, Eleanor, but let's not tempt fate again." The family focused on Marcus' mom, fussing over him as if he were the patient adjusting his collar and asking if he needed water. Her attention, a spotlight that left me in the dim. Dad clapped Marcus on the back, his laugh forced but loud in the confined space. "You were a rock through this, son. That's the Mercer spirit." Tensions simmered beneath the surface, rising like steam from a pot left too long on the stove. As Grandpa underwent ongoing monitoring with follow-up appointments, scheduled whispers of inheritance favoring Marcus filled the gaps in conversation. It'd catch snippets in the hallway, Dad's voice low to Mom. "With William's scare, it's time to lock in the will. Marcus is the one, the son, to carry it forward." Tradition holds. Mom's reply murmured agreement. "Stephanie will understand. It's for harmony." Inner thoughts twisted with a mix of anger and hurt as I pretended not to hear, leaning against the cool wall tiles that chilled my back. Harmony. At my expense. They're rewriting the future while I'm fighting for it every day. The subplot of those whispers built a prelude to the storm, each word a brick in the wall dividing us. During a family lunch in the hospital cafeteria, the trays clattering on metal rails and the aroma of institutional soup hanging heavy, Marcus lounged in his chair, scrolling his phone with that casual entitlement. Grandpa tried to steer talk to business, asking about my latest route optimizations, but Dad cut in. "Let's not bore everyone with details. Marcus has ideas too, right, son?" Marcus looked up, flashing his charming smile. "Sure, Dad. Maybe expand the fleet with some luxury hauls." The suggestion was absurd, ignoring costs, but Mom beamed. "See, Hez, thinking big." I bit my tongue, the plastic fork bending in my grip, emotions churning from frustration to isolation. The mini climax erupted later that afternoon in the room as discharge papers were signed and bags packed. Grandpa rested Grandma packing his things with careful folds when I couldn't hold back anymore. Why the rush on the inheritance? I asked, my voice steady but edged with the pain I'd bottled. I've proven myself at the company. Mom's face hardened, her hands pausing mid-fold on a sweater. Stephanie, how dare you bring this up now with your grandfather just recovering? You should be grateful for any scraps they give you as a daughter. Marcus is the son. He has the responsibility to carry the name. Dad's eyes flashed warning, but Marcus just smirked, leaning against the windowsill where sunlight slanted in like accusing fingers. Yeah, sis, don't rock the boat. Family harmony matters more than your jealousy. The words landed like slaps my cheeks, burning as if struck inner thoughts screaming in the silence. Grateful for scraps. After all I've given, this isn't harmony, it's erasure. It's... Grandma glanced at Grandpa. Her expression conflicted, but they stayed silent, the room thick with unspoken regret. I stormed out the door, clicking shut behind me, but not before Grandpa's weak call. Stephanie, wait. It was too late. The emotional confrontation left me reeling, tears blurring my vision as I navigated the maze of hallways, the overhead lights harsh and unforgiving. Outside, the April air was crisp, carrying the promise of spring blooms pushing through cracked sidewalks, but it did little to cool the fire inside. My walk alone from the hospital was foreboding, the parking lot vast and empty under a gray sky, threatening rain cars gleaming like distant hopes. Each step echoed my isolation, the divide now a chasm. Inner thoughts darkened. They've chosen sides, but I won't fade away. The clues from Grandpa lingered in my mind, a lifeline. The storm had broken and I was caught in its fury, but survival meant fighting back. The clues from Grandpa lingered in my mind, a lifeline. The storm had broken and I was caught in its fury, but survival meant fighting back. May arrived with deceptive warmth, the kind that promised renewal, but delivered only more heartache, as Grandpa's relapse claimed him, swiftly leaving Grandma to navigate the void alone in their Columbus home. The funeral had been a blur of black attire and murmured condolences, the cemetery grass soft underfoot with spring rain lingering in the air. But now came the will reading at Attorney James Thornton's office downtown. The building was an old brick structure, its lobby echoing with the click of heels on marble floors and the faint scent of polished wood from the reception desk. I arrived early, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest, the weight of recent weeks pressing down as I took the elevator up its hum, a monotonous drone matching my inner turmoil. Grandma was already there, her face lined with fresh grief, sitting stiffly in the waiting area with its leather chairs and stacked legal magazines. She squeezed my hand as I sat beside her, her touch cold despite the mild day outside where birds chirped in the trees lining the street. The conference room was formal, the long mahogany table gleaming under overhead lights, walls lined with bookshelves filled with leather-bound tomes that smelled of age and authority. Thornton, in his tailored suit with silver hair combed neatly, greeted us with somber nods as we filed in, Dad and Mom taking seats opposite Marcus, between them with that polished exterior hiding his usual nonchalance. Grandma sat at the head, her posture straight but eyes distant, still mourning. Thornton cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he opened the folder, his voice steady but heavy. William and Eleanor discussed this at length, he began, but with William's passing. The terms are clear. The estate, valued at $10 million, including controlling shares in Mercer Logistics, goes to Marcus as the only son, the one to carry the family line. Stephanie receives this personal letter to be read privately. He slid a sealed envelope across the table, its paper crisp and white, my name scrawled in Grandpa's familiar hand. The words landed like a thunderbolt, the room spinning slightly as betrayal surged through me, hot and sharp. Inner thoughts exploded in chaos, all my work, my dedication reduced to a letter. Because Marcus is the son. Emotions peaked rage bubbling up from deep within my hands, trembling as I gripped the envelope. But Grandpa promised. I whispered my voice, breaking the silence. He saw me as the future. Mom leaned forward, her expression a mix of pity and sternness, the light catching her pearl earrings. Stephanie, you should be grateful. They let you work there. Build your skills. Daughters marry and take new names, but sons like Marcus have greater responsibilities. He has to think about the legacy, the harmony of the family. Dad's eyes hardened, his tie knotted tightly as he added, "Don't be jealous of your brother. This is how it's always been. Tradition matters more than your ambitions." Marcus sat there, his face composed but a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes, as if this was his due. Rage sparked brighter, a fire igniting in my core, my breath coming short as I stood the chair, scraping back with a harsh sound on the floor. Grateful for scraps. While he gets everything I've earned, this poured my life into the company. Thornton shifted uncomfortably, his pen tapping the table softly. "The terms are final, Stephanie." William signed it knowingly, but the dialogue escalated, Mom's voice rising. "You're upsetting your grandmother. Think of the family peace. This isn't about you." Accusations flew them, denying any unfairness, insisting it was love for tradition, not bias against me. Inner thoughts screamed. They're blind to his incompetence, to my sacrifices. This betrayal cuts deeper than any business loss. The subplot of office fallout hit hard in the days following, a tense undercurrent that amplified my isolation. Back at Mercer Logistics, the warehouse alive with the rumble of forklifts and the chatter of radios, Dad called me into his office, the space cluttered with spreadsheets and coffee mugs, staining the desk. "You're demoted, effective immediately," he said flatly, his gaze avoiding mine as he shuffled papers. "Report to Marcus now, has taken lead." The words were a gut punch. My role stripped away in an instant, the air thick with the scent of printer ink and stale air. Marcus in his new corner office overlooking the docks where trucks lined up like soldiers lounged behind the desk with a smirk. "Let's keep it professional, sis. No hard feelings." But the tense situation built as he made decisions, hiring his buddies for key spots, their laughter echoing in halls once filled with my team's focused hum. Clients called confused by changes, my phone buzzing with concerns I couldn't address. Emotions of betrayal peaked during a staff meeting, the conference room stuffy with too many bodies, the projector humming as Marcus fumbled through slides I'd prepared. When I suggested corrections, he waved me off. "Not now, Stephanie. Know your place." Dad nodded approval from the side, Mom texting support from home. The family denied it was personal, but it felt like erasure. Inner thoughts raged as I left the meeting, the hallway lights flickering slightly. They're handing him the reins, watching me fade. But I won't. Pausing in the parking lot that evening, clutching Grandpa's letter in my numb fingers, the envelope crinkled from my grip, the sun setting in a blaze of orange over the city skyline. The divide felt insurmountable now, but the clues inside might hold the key. For now, I was adrift, the storm raging on. Driving back to the Columbus home felt like navigating through a fog, the highway lights streaking past in blurry lines as rain began to patter against the windshield, mirroring the turmoil inside me. The family house loomed at the end of the drive, its windows glowing warmly against the darkening sky, but it offered no comfort now, just a battlefield waiting to erupt. I parked in the driveway, the gravel crunching under tires, and stepped out into the damp air. The envelope from Grandpa clutched in my hand like a talisman. Inside the foyer was lit by the chandeliers, soft glow, the scent of leftover dinner hanging heavy. But the atmosphere was charged voices, already raised from the living room, where parents and Marcus had gathered. Mom spotted me first, her face twisting as she rose from the couch, the fabric creasing under her hands. "Stephanie, how could you cause a scene like that at the reading?" she demanded, her voice sharp like a knife edge pacing the rug with its faded patterns, worn from years of footsteps. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed over his chest, the mantel clock ticking loudly in the silence between words. You embarrassed us all, questioning tradition in front of Thornton. Marcus lounged in the armchair, his legs stretched out, a glass of scotch in hand, swirling lazily, his expression, one of smug satisfaction. The scolding escalated quickly. Mom's words turning to berating as she pointed a finger at me, her nails manicured and flashing under the light. "You're so ungrateful after everything we've given you. A good education, a job at the company? But no, you have to make it about you. Daughters are supposed to support the family, not tear it apart with jealousy." Inner thoughts raced like a storm wind, anger bubbling up as I stood there, my coat still on dripping rain, onto the hardwood floor. Ungrateful for wanting fairness, I've built that company, while Marcus parties away his days. Dad's voice joined in deep and condemning, his face reddening. Marcus has greater responsibilities as the son. He carries the name, the legacy. You'll marry someday, change yours. Be thankful for the scraps, it's more than most get. Marcus chimed in, his tone casual but cutting, leaning forward with that smug smile. "Come on, sis, don't be dramatic. Family harmony matters more than your ambitions. I'm the one who has to step up now." The emotional abuse intensified, their words piling on like weights, dismissing my achievements as if they were nothing, my role reduced to a supporting act in Marcus' story. Mom circled closer, her perfume cloying in the heated room. "You always were too headstrong, too focused on work. Learn to be content like a good daughter should." The subplot tied to societal views unfolded when a neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins from next door, knocked during the height of the argument, her umbrella dripping on the porch as she peered in with concern. I heard raised voices. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking between us, the rain pattering behind her like distant applause. Dad waved her off smoothly, stepping to the door with a forced smile. "Just family talk, Ellen. Nothing to worry about." She nodded, but her expression held that judgmental pity, whispering as she left. "These things happen in families, dear. Best not to air dirty laundry." It was dismissed as a family matter, but it underscored how outsiders saw us, reinforcing the isolation, the expectation to keep quiet for appearances. The mini-climax built as the abuse peaked, my shock delaying any sharp response, at first leaving me standing there numb, the envelope crumpling in my fist. "How dare you?" I finally burst out, my voice cracking with rage, tears hot on my cheeks. "I've given everything to Mercer while Marcus squanders it on parties and cars. And you call me ungrateful." Marcus stood then, his glass clinking on the table, claiming entitlement with a shrug. "I have responsibilities you can't understand. The name, the line, it's on me." Dad nodded, Mom crossing her arms. "See jealousy. Be grateful, Stephanie, or find your own way." The words were a final blow, my vow forming in the heat of it. "You'll regret this, all of you. Treating me like I'm disposable." Shock held me frozen for a moment, delaying my exit, but I turned, storming out to the driveway where rain pooled in puddles, reflecting the house lights. They followed, berating still, but I was left there with $370 in my wallet, the sum of my immediate world, the door slamming shut behind them. The drive to the motel was a haze, the wipers swishing rhythmically as I checked into a cheap room on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering vacancy in red letters against the night. The room was musty with thin carpets and a bed sagging in the middle, the air conditioner rattling like loose change. Sitting on the edge, I opened the letter with trembling hands, the paper crisp, revealing cryptic clues about the Lake Erie spot and my favorite book. Inner thoughts whispered hope amid the rage. This might be my way out. The storm was far from over. June unfolded with a deceptive calm, the kind that follows a tempest where the air feels cleaner, but the damage lingers in uprooted branches and flooded streets. I found myself reaching out to Julia Henderson Grandpa's longtime executive assistant at Mercer Logistics, her number still saved in my phone from years of collaboration. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of Cleveland, the place tucked away with outdoor tables under striped awnings, the scent of fresh brewed coffee mingling with blooming lilacs from nearby planters. It was a spot far from the office, away from prying eyes, the June sun warm on my skin, as I sat waiting, my hands fidgeting with a napkin. Julia arrived, her sensible blouse and skirt, a contrast to my rumpled jeans, her face lined with concern as she slid into the seat across from me. "Stephanie," she said, her voice low and steady. "I've been worried. The way they pushed you out, it's not right." Over lattes steaming in ceramic mugs, the foam swirling like uncertain thoughts, she revealed what she'd known. "Your grandparents' early drafts of the will considered merit above all," she explained, leaning forward, her eyes meeting mine with sincerity. "They saw your work, your vision for the company. But the bias pressure mounted that old notion of daughters marry and take new names, while sons preserve the line. It wore them down, especially with your parents, and Marcus insisting on tradition. Emotions of hope flickered in my chest, a spark in the darkness but interwoven with internal conflict doubt, creeping in like shadows at dusk. Could this be true? Had they really wanted me to lead, only to cave to outdated ideas? Inner thoughts battled hope, clashing with the pain of betrayal. If they believed in me, why give in? But resolve began to form, a quiet steel hardening within. The subplot of therapy started that same week, a step I took in desperation to unpack the trauma. Dr. Marlene Foster's office in downtown Cleveland was a soothing space, soft lighting from lamps casting warm glows on plush chairs and bookshelves lined with titles on family dynamics and resilience. She was in her late 40s, her demeanor calm and inviting, her notepad balanced on her knee as I sank into the couch, the fabric soft against my tense back. "Tell me about the gender expectations," she prompted gently, her pen poised. "How does it feel to be dismissed because you're a daughter?" The sessions dug deep emotions raw as I described the favoritism, the way Marcus was praised for existing, while my achievements were minimized. "It's like him invisible," I said, tears welling as the words poured out, the room quiet, except for the tick of a clock on the wall. Dr. Foster nodded, unpacking the trauma layer by layer, helping me see the bias as their limitation, not mine. Inner thoughts shifted during those hours, doubt giving way to clarity. "This is my fault. I can reclaim my power." The light twist came on a solo trip to Lake Erie, drawn by Grandpa's clue as hope pushed me forward. The drive north was reflective, the highway winding through green fields dotted with wildflowers, the lake appearing like a vast blue mirror under the sun. Our spot by the old oak tree was unchanged, the trunk gnarled and ancient, its hollow, a secret keeper from childhood games. I knelt in the grass, damp from morning dew, my fingers probing the rough bark until they touched metal, a key attached to a small fishing lure from our trips. The discovery sent a jolt through me, the twist unexpected, yet fitting a hidden message from beyond the immediate pain. Emotions surged, hope brightening as I pocketed it, the waves lapping gently at the shore like encouragement. What does this unlock? A way to fight back. Back in Columbus, the sequence built to discovering Marcus' bad decisions, starting with discreet inquiries at the office. Julia helped slipping me files during a covert lunch, her expression grave as we sat in a park, pigeons cooing around benches scattered with fallen leaves. "Look at this," she said, passing a folder under the table. "Marcus has been hiring his friends for key positions, no experience required. And the contracts, disastrous deals losing us millions. Personal expenses charged to the company, luxury cars trips. The evidence was damning, spreadsheets showing red ink like bloodstains, emails revealing his incompetence masked by charm. Inner thoughts raced with vindication mixed with sorrow. Has destroying what we built, and they let him because he's the son. But this is my ammunition." The discoveries closed the loop, resolve solidifying as doubt faded. The cafe meetings with Julia became strategy sessions, the aroma of pastries a backdrop to our plans. Therapy with Dr. Foster provided the emotional anchor, unpacking how the daughter's Mary belief had warped my self-worth, but I was rebuilding. The key from the oak hollow burned in my pocket, a promise of more to uncover. As June waned, the pieces were falling into place, the path ahead clearer. The fight was just beginning. July brought sweltering heat to Cleveland, the kind that made the air shimmer over asphalt parking lots and turned office buildings into ovens, despite air conditioning, straining to keep up. I met with advisor Daniel Reeves in his modest downtown office, a space cluttered with legal pads and stacked files, the walls adorned with diplomas from local law schools and a window overlooking the bustling streets where pedestrians hurried with umbrellas against sudden showers. Daniel was in his mid-40s, sharp-eyed, and direct his desk lamp casting a warm glow on the documents we reviewed, spreadsheets detailing Marcus mismanagement spread out like evidence in a trial. "Look at these contracts," he said, his finger tracing lines of red ink highlighting losses Marcus signed deals with unreliable suppliers, overpaying by millions for subpar services, and the personal expenses luxury cars billed as company vehicles, trips to Vegas masked as client meetings. The numbers didn't lie, each entry a stab of validation, my hands steady on the papers as I absorbed the extent of the damage. Emotions of empowerment began to grow a slow bloom, like flowers pushing through cracked concrete, replacing the helplessness that had gripped me. Inner thoughts shifted from doubt to clarity as we pored over the details, the room quiet except for the tick of a wall clock and the distant honk of traffic. This is proof not just of incompetence, but of how bias blinded them. "Am not the jealous one, they're the fools." Daniel leaned back in his creaky chair, steepling his fingers. "We can use this to show the board the risks, but keep it discreet for now. Your new venture needs time to take root." The subplot of secretly building the competing company unfolded in hushed calls and late-night planning. My apartment becoming a makeshift headquarters, with laptops glowing on the kitchen table and takeout containers scattered like discarded ideas. It'd contact trusted partners under the radar, starting with old suppliers who'd seen my work firsthand. One evening, I met a key client at a quiet diner on the outskirts, the booth vinyl sticking to my legs in the humid air, the jukebox playing soft country tunes in the background. "I've always appreciated your vision, Stephanie," the client said over coffee, his mug steaming. "Marcus changes are chaotic. If you start something new, count us in." Wed switch in a heartbeat. The agreements were verbal at first handshakes, sealing deals that felt like reclaiming pieces of my future empowerment, surging with each yes, my resolve hardening like steel in a forge. Tense situations arose at the office where female employees I'd mentored stepped forward with statements on the sexism that had festered. In the break room, with its coffee machine gurgling and the hum of the fridge, a group gathered during lunch, their faces a mix of fear and solidarity as they shared stories. "We've seen the remarks, the dismissals, because we're women," one said, her voice low but firm, "and now with Marcus in charge, it's worse." Well testified to the bias if needed. The air was thick with shared indignation, the scent of microwave lunches lingering as they handed me written accounts, their support a beacon that fueled my growing strength. Inner thoughts raced with gratitude. These women see the truth. Their voices will echo mine, turning the tide against the old guard. The mini-climax came in, confirming the company losses, Daniel and I reviewing the final audit in his office. As evening fell, the city lights twinkling outside like stars in a darkening sky. The report was damning, projecting irreversible damage if trends continued. Millions evaporated under Marcus' watch. "This seals it," Daniel said, closing the folder with a snap that echoed in the quiet room. Emotions of empowerment crested a wave, crashing through the last barriers of doubt, my path clear and unyielding. We paused on planning the client shifts, outlining the sequence over cooling tea, the mugs leaving rings on the desk like seals on a pact. The pieces were aligning the storm it weathered, now turning in my favor. The fight was gaining ground, but the battles ahead would test everything. July hit Cleveland like a freight train. the heat rising off the pavement in waves that distorted the city's skyline, and the boardroom at Mercer Logistics HQ became the arena where everything converged. I stepped into that familiar space in mid-month, the long table polished to a mirror shine under recessed lights, the walls lined with charts of past successes that now felt like relics. Daniel Reeves stood by my side, his briefcase snapped open on the table, files ready, as board members filed in their suits, crisp despite the humidity seeping through the windows overlooking the bustling docks below. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee from the sideboard and the faint tang of marker from dry erase boards, but tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Walter Johnson, the chairman, nodded at me from the head, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Stephanie, you called this meeting. What's this about?" I took a breath, my heart pounding as I laid out the mismanagement projecting slides that detailed Marcus. Bad contracts, the numbers glaring in red like warning signals on a dashboard. "Look at these deals," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves over payments to unreliable vendors, millions lost in inefficiencies, and the hires his friends in key roles with no experience draining resources. The room shifted, murmurs rising as board members leaned forward, their chairs creaking, eyes widening at the evidence. One, a veteran logistics expert, shook his head. "This explains the client complaints, who's responsible?" Marcus, I replied, meeting their gazes. "He's been running things his way since the inheritance." The announcement of client switches came next, my voice gaining strength as I revealed the partnerships I'd secured for my new venture. Major accounts are moving effective immediately. I stated, naming the big players who trusted my vision over Marcus' chaos. The reaction was immediate gasps, filling the room as papers rustled and phones buzzed with urgent texts. This led to whispers of client lawsuits brewing, demands for accountability over lost revenues, and the subplot of community backlash erupted in real time. News spread fast in Cleveland's tight-knit business circles, social media lighting up with posts critiquing the gender bias that put an incompetent son in charge while sidelining a proven daughter. Local forums buzzed women in logistics, sharing stories of similar dismissals, the scandal amplifying as reporters called for comments. Grandmother witnessed the fallout from home, her calls to me filled with regret, her voice trembling over the line as she said, "I see now, dear, the mistake we made, clinging to old ways." The climax built as the board confronted the reality projections, showing Mercer Logistics heading to bankruptcy in 18 months by mid-2025, the graphs plummeting like a truck off a cliff. Revenues down 40%, debts mounting from those bad deals, clients fleeing in droves. Marcus, sitting at the end with his usual composure cracking, showed minor remorse for the first time, his face paling as he muttered, "I thought I could handle it." The family name. Emotions of triumph swelled in me, a rush like crossing the finish line after a grueling race, vindication washing over the years of doubt. Inner thoughts soared. They see it now, the folly of bias over merit. I've proven my worth not just to them, but to myself. The board deliberated, voices overlapping in heated discussion, the room growing warmer as tempers flared. Decisions were made. Marcus sidelined, but the damage was done, the company spiraling. Outside, the city moved on, but for me, it was a turning point. The divide crossed at last. Years later, by 2025, my new company thrived, offices, expanded, trucks bearing my logo, rolling across highways, revenue, surpassing what Mercer ever achieved. The old empire was gone, but mine stood strong, a testament to resilience. The anniversary in 2025 dawned clear and crisp, the kind of day that felt like a fresh start, as I drove to the gravesite outside Columbus, the road winding through rolling hills dotted with wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Grandpa's marker stood solemn under a canopy of oaks, the stone warmed by morning sun, engraved with dates that marked a life of grit and love. I knelt, placing a small fishing lure as a memento, its metal glinting as I set it at the base, the act stirring memories that washed over me like gentle waves. The wind rustled the leaves above a soft whisper through branches, heavy with green, triggering a vivid flash of us at Lake Erie lines, cast into sparkling water, laughter echoing as Grandma teased about the one that got away, her smile bright against the horizon. Emotions of peace settled in a quiet calm after years of turmoil, strength blooming from the scars like roots finding soil after a drought. Parents had borne the financial penalties from the bankruptcy assets sold to cover debts, their once comfortable life reduced to a small condo where echoes of regret filled the rooms. Dad had called weeks before his voice broken over the line. We lost sight of what mattered, Stephanie. Tradition blinded us to your merit. Mom joined tears evident in her tone. Forgive us for the pain. Marcus, now in an entry-level job at a local warehouse stacking boxes under fluorescent lights that buzzed like persistent doubts, was seeking independence, his charm no longer a shield. He'd messaged me, remorse clear. I see now what I took, sis. You deserved better. The subplot of therapy with Dr. Foster had resolved much of the trauma. Our final sessions in her office, with its comforting throw blankets and herbal tea, steaming on the side table, unpacking the last layers of bias that had lingered. You've reclaimed your narrative, she'd said, her smile warm as I described the new company's success. No more defining yourself by their limitations. Chosen family had filled the voids, Julia becoming like a sister with her steady support, our coffee meets turning into strategy huddles where she'd share office gossip with a laugh. Walter from the old board mentored over lunches, his wisdom a guiding light. They were my anchors, proof that bonds built on respect outlast blood ties strained by outdated rules. Karma wove through the family's fallout. Mercer Logistics, a memory by mid-2025. Its warehouses, empty gates chained under overgrown weeds, the once roaring engines silent. The scandal had rippled community forums buzzing with critiques of gender bias, women sharing stories that echoed mine, a collective awakening. Emotions of strength surged, a profound peace in knowing it not just survived, but thrived. My new venture, expanding with efficient fleets, crossing state lines, revenue steady and growing. The bittersweet reconciliation unfolded at the gravesite family arriving, as I stood their car pulling up the gravel path with a crunch that broke the quiet. Mom and Dad approached, first faces etched with humility. Marcus trailing with downcast eyes. Stephanie, Mom said, her voice breaking as she clutched a bouquet of wildflowers. We were wrong, so wrong, to favor tradition over your merit. Please forgive us. Dad nodded, his eyes downcast. We begged for harmony but destroyed it ourselves. Marcus stepped forward, his voice soft. I took it all for granted, didn't see the weight until it crushed us. Please forgive me. Inner thoughts stirred with mixed feelings, the pain lingering but softened by time. Peace, allowing me to nod. It's not easy, but merit won. We can rebuild slowly. We embrace the moment tender under the rustling leaves, reinforcing that tradition bows to true strength, family finding its way back through humility. If you face similar betrayals or biases, share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you found your strength. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of resilience and triumph over adversity.